better tomorrow. Mission better tomorrow.
Extraordinary situations demand extraordinary solutions. For the last 15 years, Mission Better Tomorrow, or MBT, has been doing it. Constantly and continuously engaging with society and coming up with out-of-the-box solutions to pressing social problems. MBT is a collective of committed professionals united by the passion to create a better tomorrow by consciously investing in today. Together, they have been developing an army of capable, caring, and responsible young change leaders working towards the creation of peaceful, productive, and progressive societies. MBT derives its conceptual basis from Mahatma Gandhi's doctrine of trusteeship. If I gain a fair amount of wealth, either by way of legacy or by means of trade and industry, I must know that all the wealth does not belong to me. What belongs to me is only the right to an honorable livelihood, a return for labor and care, no better than that enjoyed by millions of others. The rest belongs to the community and must be used for the welfare of the society. MBT is constantly inspired by the thought leadership of Mr. P. Vijayan IPS. From a child laborer in paddy fields and construction sites and a self-taught school dropout, Mr. Vijayan traveled a long way till he reached the prestigious Indian Police Service. Mr. Vijayan is the brain behind many nationally acclaimed policing and community initiatives. He is the winner of the CNN IBM Indian of the Year in 2014 and the Indian President's Police Medal for Meritorious Service in 2016. MBT has its roots in various philanthropic activities initiated in 2006. These include Operation Candlelight, MBT Learning Centers, SEEP, and Project Hope. And yes, when the nation went into lockdown during the pandemic, MBT rose to the occasion and took up programs spreading positivity and exploring possibilities of human resilience. MBT's initiatives like Feed a Stomach program, drug banks, the Foresee Help Desk, and Make Change campaign captured the public imagination in no time. As part of reaching out to the people locked up due to lockdown, MBT launched the Post Talk series. Post stands for Positivity and Possibilities, the very lifeline of human existence. Since then, the program has gathered a huge viewership from across the world. Nearly 100 speakers who have etched their marks in professional excellence address the MBT audience. Figures show that on average, the Post Talk held on Fridays Indian time at 7 p.m. reached 3 million people every week. The overwhelming success of Friday Talks prompted MBT to launch the global section of Post.
Good evening. Welcome to the 12th episode of Post Global Talk Series. Respected Police IG Sri P. Vijayan IPS, Honorable Speaker Mr. Sajith Sivanandan, MD, Google Pay, valuable participants in and across India and across the globe, and my own team at Mission Better Tomorrow. It's a pleasure and delight to welcome each one of you along with my good friend and my own native and the native of Mr. P. Vijayan also, Mr. Sajith, who hails from Calicut and who rose from good to great in his journey, a few points of which I will be reading shortly to you. It's an additional honor for me on behalf of Mission Better Tomorrow with a great responsibility to welcome you, Mr. Sajith, on this auspicious evening. We are truly blessed by your gracious presence. In spite of a heavy work schedule, you have conceded your time to talk to lakhs of participants who are viewing this program in all of our social media platforms. Friends, Mr. Sajith Sivanandan, the MD and business head of Google Pay and next billion user initiatives of Asia Pacific, is from Calicut and our own Kerala. And as I mentioned earlier, he rose from good to great heights in Google. He is now stationed in Bangalore, but travels all across the world on behalf of discharging his official responsibilities. Prior to moving to India, he was the MD of Google across Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines, and many emerging countries, and oversaw the sales and operation. He has been with Google since 2007. He has a master's degree in business management with distinction from Asian School of Management, Manila, and another additional MBA from Foresee School of Management. And also, he has a bachelor's degree from the prestigious Hindu College, Delhi. In his professional career and as part of his official responsibilities, he is an advisor to the Malaysian government on future of work and also the member of Malaysian Global Innovation Creativity. I'm sure that this talk will have a lot of takeaways with the audience who have logged into this platform. Sincere thanks to you, Mr. Sajith, once more for accepting our invitation. And while I welcome each and everyone who's attending this talk series across the world, I wish to inform you all, POS has spread positivity and possibilities since its inception by instigating the seal of positivity by our own Sri P. Vijayan IPS since the pandemic started and we started this talk series. Our regional talks has gone much beyond 60 episodes with speakers of good in number. I'm not prolonging, but said so with these words, I now invite Police IG Sri P. Vijayan to come kindly step in and give an introduction on the topic, the changing of manual leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Engineer Anthony. Very good evening to one and all. Thank you so much to Mr. Sajith Sivanandan. It's really a great privilege that a man from creating history by studying history, that's really great. And I was communicating with Sajith through WhatsApp that saying that your mere presence itself is an inspiration to many. It's not a mere words, because many aspiring youngsters, once you come to about you and all, it will be really some sort of role model for them in the travel of their journey, their journey of life. When we talk about changing the manual of leadership, it's quite interesting topic. I think it has been suggested by Mr. Sajith itself. I think that is the change and leadership. Both are human phenomenon. It's highly heterogeneous in nature, and that is the change itself is what type of change and the size and the content and all. That's for what change itself is a very important thing. And leadership, it's another heterogeneous nature in the sense that it's the population, the resources, the aim, the objectives, and the varies as far as the different leadership community is concerned. For example, in government, and in government itself, there are different level of leadership, different types of leadership. I belong to the force. Actually, we represent nearly, I think, maybe 3 million soldiers, police personnel in India. Their overall, that is what will be the manual. I was just wondering what will be the change of manual if we change the manual of leadership as far as police force is concerned. And in the government itself, with the leadership, I was thinking that the government leadership matters a lot, especially in the COVID-19 pandemic. Even though we don't like, the power of government has increased, the person's power has increased. They have been given enough powers to even enter into the very basic personal details about the persons. So what type of leadership should be there, and what type of quality there should be there. So that's one thing that is there should be 2 chapters in that manual. I think that one is that something applicable to all of us, and something related to this specific to the private or public, within the private itself, in the digital world, and all this the hardware world or like that. So there should be a lot of agility in preparing a manual at all, if you prepare a manual or make an attempt to that one. Here, I think that the biggest thing about, as far as the COVID-19 pandemic and the new world order has created, is the new normal has created, is that the agility of a leader. It is how agility of leader, as Diolit that CEO, that Puneet Ranjan rightly said, that the agility to fix the plane while it's flying. That is how we'll fix it, that one. And here that it is very interesting thing is that we are moving in a very, very dangerous position. There, how the trust of this companions, the team is very, very important. The trust of that. So that one side we have to create the trust. Another side is that we have to fix the plane also. So this is something very, very, very tricky business. So accordingly, that has to be the very strategy, or the very principles of leadership also, way of management also has to be changed. Another one important thing, especially the COVID-19 pandemic, it is the time to test the emotional intelligence of the emotional intelligence skill of the leaders. Here, the thing is that it is that how he balanced the empathy and was balanced with the business success. That is making because one side we have various types of that is many people except very few sectors, almost all the sectors have been very badly affected by this COVID-19 pandemic impact. So how we'll balance that empathy towards its own people, and at the same time how will it survive this one? It's another very serious matter. This all to be actually, when a leader makes his mind, he has to keep it all this in his mind. The honesty and trust, that's very much, it's as I mentioned at the beginning, the honesty and trust, it is more important nowadays, because the earlier days, Mr. Sajith itself has been talking about the hybrid models, about this management, leadership, or the business management. Here, the hybrid. That is most often we are not seeing our employees. And in my case, I'm heading few organizations. In one organization is a training organization. We have around 3,000 men under training, officers and men under training. Actually, we know that the COVID-19 pandemic, sometimes we have to lay off, sometimes we have to send home, sometimes we have to keep off the class, they have to attend the programs online and all. Here the thing is that a trust between the giver and taker. There should be really to be led and the led. There should be absolute need for a trust here. And another very important area which I felt that is the sense of there is in this period the level of transparency. It's importance of level of transparency in the entire handling. It is not only for within and outside the organization. That's also considered to be very, very important. And of course, I think that the leader of in the new normal, he is one important, very important thing is that how he himself stay motivated. That is stay motivated along with keeping others motivated. Because it's when we fix the plane while flying, there are several occasions that may come up. That is, we are going to completely fail into a doldrum, such a such a feeling may come. How a leader can stay motivated in such a turmoil? That's another thing which must be looked into this while think about means preparing the manual for new leadership. And another that is. And then keeping others motivated. That's there are that's often life and death situations, or in such situations, how will upkeep the motivated? What strategy will follow? That is, especially we will not be able to meet them. Mostly we'll be addressing them online or something like that. So we may not be able to read their pulses, their problems, their emotions, and all. So in such situations, how a leader be successful in keeping motivating others, it's another important thing. And I consider that is the new leadership, or its emerging leadership, must focus more about the collaborations among the group and outside the group. Then only it can be really successful in handling many problems and the creativity. I think that this is an occasion for a rarest of rare creative and innovations can happen, because it's many things can't work now. We have to find out new ways of doing. So the creativity, a leader has to be really creative during this period. And it is not the but means another important thing, that is the ability to predict the unpredictable things. I was wondering that is when I was going through the story of Google. We know that is the big giant and all. It's considered to be our god nowadays, the ultimate god, searching for anything and all, everything. And so even my own team, everyone always say that, sir, I'll pay through Google. That's Google Pay. That's just become a payment means Google Pay. That has become in such a manner. So I would not like to speak much about the Google, but I was wondering about the Netflix. Netflix, the way it has been developed, it's just that is sending that DVDs wide mail. Now it has become, it's a big theater owner in the world. The entire theaters in the world is run by this Netflix. Such an adaptability to the change and predictability to change is also very, very, very important. And of course, I think that in these challenging times, especially in the new normal, any leader, whoever is a true leader, has to be over-communicative in the sense that he'll be able to reach out to his own people and the people of his own clients and in a more emphatic manner, with a lot of empathy, along with creating a lot of confidence in them. So I think that when we think about changing the manual of leadership in new normal, many things may come to mind. I think that there's the right person and amongst us today to speak about it. I think many people will get really motivated and get some sort of insights in this, particularly in these challenging times. Thank you so much, Sajith, once again joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, Vijayan sir, for the perfect opening for this today's evening discussion. Sir has talked about different aspects of leadership. And as he has rightly said, we have amidst us the right person to talk about leadership and the changing manual of leadership, to be precise. Because 23 years ago, Google happened. Since then, nothing has been the same. Google changed the way people look up internet for information, that too in multiple ways. It is not just a search engine domination, but which brought in PageRank algorithm to bring in a paradigm shift in the search engine logic. But what Google did is much more than that. It created a platform for almost everything that you need to look in online: mail, map, music, virtual office, business, almost every requirement. So the human experience is now poised to enter a new phase of evolution in the post-pandemic era. And online entities like Google need to revise its brand positioning. And here we have Sajith Sivanandan to speak about it. Welcome once again, Mr. Sajith, to the 12th edition of the Post Global Talk. We will discuss the topic, the changing manual of leadership. Let's start with the pandemic situation has changed the human relation, as we have mentioned. And it is reflected in the leadership also. The new concept is hybrid leadership, which Vijayan sir very detailed, elaborated in a very effective manner. He said how different streams need to be integrated for this hybrid leadership. So what are your thoughts on the concept of hybrid leadership, where the team participation can happen even remotely? How is it going to define the quality of professionalism?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the question. And, once again, thank you, Mr. Vijayan, for having me join this. What I was thinking is it's incredible that so many people have actually joined, because I would think by 7:30, 90% of them will go off to watch the match. And that is what happens in this day of, a world where we live in both the real world as well as the virtual world. And, we can be in so many places at the same time. But once again, thank you. And, it's quite inspirational to see what the pause movement is doing. Look, I think to the question at hand, to the first question at hand, when we think of hybrid leadership, actually it's very interesting. There was, the reality is hybrid leadership was always there, but the pandemic, more than anything else, has really helped, people of all kinds just understand and appreciate what it is like to operate in a hybrid world, right? Like, so even as individuals and as, people who live at homes, we suddenly realize the value of what a hybrid world looks like. And what do I mean by that? So not only are you surrounded by people, will be their friends, family, or partners, whoever, but by looking on different kind of services online, you can have things sent to your home, right? So not only are you living in the real world with people who are occupying the same space, but you actually engage with businesses and all now in a more virtual manner, and you engage, and then the next thing you know, real goods arrive at your doorstep. And that that has taken on so much prominence in the last 2 years. From a leadership perspective, actually, it's incredibly exciting to be a leader in a hybrid world at this point in time. There are 2 or 3 things, for us to think about. Number one, when you're leading remotely, how do you inspire people, right? And that, I think, is, it's so much more easier to inspire people and to be inspired when you're, imagine if this were happening in a real sort of auditorium somewhere, and so on and so forth. And so imagine the same thing as you think about work. How do you, lead remotely and yet inspire is, one question for all of us as leaders to think about. The second thing to think about is that actually your span as either a follower or as a leader is so much wider in the virtual world, right? I mean, because today you're not restricted by borders anymore all of a sudden, right? Like, so I actually have teams all around the world, not just in Asia, and I work closely with them. But it's harder doing this in a virtual environment, without doubt, right? Than it is if you can combine the hybrid, right? Like the real and the virtual. It's hard from that perspective. Lastly, the thing to really think about is that everyone is either a leader and is also a follower at the same time. So when you think of it from that perspective, how do you really act as a leader at that point in time in a hybrid world? And then how do you act as a follower? Because, the reality is the requirements of being disciplined in a hybrid world is much more higher than if you were in a real world, right? I mean, one of the best definitions I've heard of, what culture means is culture is what you do when nobody is watching, right? And I'm sure Mr. Vijayan, as an IG of police, understands what I mean by that as well, right? And so you want people to act like they own something without necessarily being supervised by anyone, right? And the responsibility of that on each one of us is much higher, because now we are from home. So who's really tracking us if we are in office or not? I mean, how many calls are we attending? How much work gets done? All of which is much more easier to kind of track when you're in office. So net, look, a hybrid world is it's a very, very interesting world. I think technology has made it possible to live in this hybrid world, and not just live, but be productive and to lead in this hybrid world. And, the reality of the pandemic, as I see it, and mind you, there's no better way to be wrong than to try and predict the future, is that I think we are now only going to live in a hybrid world. I think people have realized that You don't have to travel all the time, and yet travel will be important. People have realized that you can also get things done virtually, and yet it's important to travel to travel to places and meet people, face to face. So this hybrid world, if you will, is here to stay. And I think with that is going to be a lot of excitement around the things that I just talked about how you can inspire people, how you can, operate with a wider span of control, and how everybody is not just a leader, but is also a follower.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sajith. I would like to take this discussion a little further into the concept, the basic concept of leadership. For example, what Google achieved through extraordinary indexing of internet, which revolutionized the search mechanism as against the existing curated outlets. So once the search became free for all, the opportunity emerged to create revenue out of it. In other words, Google worked upon an existing system and did not bring in a new system. So basically, it means that the leadership doesn't change because the human nature doesn't change. Only the circumstances will change. That's what is changing. And the pandemic has changed the circumstance drastically. So in this light, how logical is it to say that the new world needs a new method of leadership?
No, it's. I think what your thesis there is absolutely spot on, Mr. Haridas. I mean, in the sense that, look, you could say that maybe in some cases, but maybe even with, let's say, what IG Vijayan does, even in that area, I think some change is needed. My view is that, across any and all sectors, we indeed have to think about a new model of leadership, or a leadership model that's a little bit more evolved, right? Because as I was saying, the ability to be able to drive outcomes, the ability to be able to inspire people, and to be able to do this virtually is something that most leaders, or at least those who are leaders today, have not grown up with, right? I mean, we've all operated in the real world. There's been no pandemic in any one of our lifetimes, right? And so I actually think that those on the call, and I'm sure that there are a few who are, 20, 25 years old, future leaders, all of them, I think for them, this is an incredible training ground. The pandemic is sad for what it is, and all of us wish it never happened, but it has, and we must accept it. And, we have to take the lessons from it. And I think for those of us who are leaders today, we have had to adapt literally in the last 2 years. But for future leaders, I think this has been an incredible opportunity to understand what it takes to lead with empathy, to lead, with high EQ, to lead with, to be able to inspire, not just, face to face, but virtually, which, by the way, is much, much harder than when you actually meet people in person and are able to spend time with them. And you can sit in a room with them, or sit in a large auditorium, or take them out for a lunch and talk to them. And today, though, we have to communicate like this by virtual means and still try and, align people and inspire people and do that. So I think it's been very hard for those of us who got all our training in sort of like the real world, if you will. But on the other hand, to look at this from a glass half full perspective, I think for future leaders, the younger ones amongst us on this call, I think for them, this has been an incredible training ground. And, they're going to be such outstanding leaders, because not only are they learning what it means like to lead in a virtual world, but the reality is that they will also be meeting people face to face over a period of time as well.
Sorry, Shreyas, can you just stop? Okay, thank you. At this point, thank you, Sajith, Mr. Sajith. At this point, I think we can take a question from Cecil Augustine. He is the head of retail business Adani Solar. Cecil ji, are you online? Because we have been discussing about the multiple channels, that options that are available for the new leaders, the emerging leaders.
Sure.
So, Cecil ji? Cecil was online. So basically, the question that he asked, he shared with us is that we are in a fast-changing era of various intelligences. To name a few. Yeah, are you online, Cecil?
Hi. Pleasure to have you in our session. Sorry. I'm driving basically through Godstone country. I'm highly inspired by your career. Sajith, great to have you in our Mission Better Tomorrow. So, I'm also yes, intelligence. Okay, like we have commercial intelligence, we have technical intelligence, we have artificial intelligence now. Now, the biggest thing to articulate and figure out is the emotional intelligence. Yep. So, do we have a suggestion? Do you have a suggestion from your side that how do we tackle the emotional intelligence in the present set of complex post-COVID scenario, or rather in the normal scenario?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Sajith, for your time. Yeah.
No, thank you, Cecil. Thank you. I think it's a very good question. Look, what I would say is, it doesn't matter which era we live in, and it doesn't matter what kind of intelligences sort of grow or we need to learn to live with. Emotional intelligence will continue to be very important and will continue to be something. And will continue to be something that defines whether a leader can be successful or not. Now, I cannot pretend nor claim to have a manual to be able to teach emotional intelligence, but the foundations of what it takes to cultivate emotional intelligence always, I think, are universal and consistent to somebody, right? Which is, do you have the ability to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes? Can you have that empathy? Second is, are you patient enough? Because different people operate at different speeds and have different motivations. Well, are you patient enough to be able to help them through that? And the third, and I again equally critical bit is, the ability to be able to take multiple perspectives is very important to be able to actually lead with emotional intelligence. And what do I mean by that? Your perspective as somebody who works at Adani will be very different to, let's say, someone else's perspective who works, in the police. And for a leader to be able to actually take those multiple perspectives is going to be very important in order to be able to lead with emotional intelligence. So I think if you think of these three things about being empathetic, being patient, and having multiple perspectives, then I think you get to a really, really good place. But mind you, everybody gets to their comfort levels in regard to emotional intelligence in their own way. And I don't imagine that there's any one perfect answer. Different people come at this in different ways. And, I think we must respect that. But the importance of emotional intelligence will always be there, regardless of whether, what computers do, what technology does, etc. Emotional intelligence will always be number one.
Cecil ji, I think, hope you have got
great.
your...
Thank you, Sajith. Thank you for your,
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Cecil.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you.
Let's continue with the discussion that you have just mentioned. You have highlighted the need to have empathy in relation with even in virtual world. But then, Sajith, the business models as we knew it in the pre-pandemic era has become redundant. In those days, the human transactions were mostly, as you have said, direct in physical. They were based on trust and mostly interpersonal relations. Now, the personal spaces has been eliminated, and social distancing is the new normal. So how do you foresee the evolution of business model that rely on human management or human engagement?
Yeah, no, again, it's a complex question. It's a large question, but I would challenge one thing you said there, Mr. Haridas, which is, you use the word redundant. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to say that models or anything we've done have become redundant. It's just that they have had to evolve, and those who have not evolved or have refused to evolve will find themselves either by the wayside or actually extinct. And I'll give you a small example, and I just happened to encounter this a few days ago. There's a in Delhi, there is a shop that there's a small restaurant, and it makes this chola bhatura. And it's a shop that's been around since 1950s, very classical, very old. It's a small shop, but very popular. And, very recently they started a very good, actually, website. And you can order online and they'll deliver to you no matter where you are. So even if you are literally at the opposite end of Delhi from them, doesn't matter, they will get it across to you. They might charge for the delivery, but they are very popular. They're so well known, and the ability to get that delivered to you is quite powerful. And they never used to do this, but the pandemic forced them to, and they decided to evolve, right? And the simple reason for that being that when the lockdown happened, and the lockdown happened for quite some time, you can imagine the impact on their business, because they had no means of going about delivering this, etc. They didn't think of all of that. Suddenly this happened. Everything happened so fast. But they've evolved. And I think it's remarkable that a company that, it's not, company is a big word to use, a small one shop that's been around since 1950 has, actually suddenly in the last 18 months evolved so much and embraced the benefits that technology brings, the internet brings, delivery brings, and is expanding its business. So I think those who don't evolve, or those who don't find ways to go back to kind of our word for the evening today, those who don't find ways to marry to kind of actually live in a hybrid sort of scenario are the ones who are going to fall by the wayside. And I think business models are going to evolve such that they will, combine what is physical combined with what is virtual, and find ways to be able to serve users of all kinds and be able to, not just survive, but actually thrive. Because, look, all of us have to believe that there is a world after the pandemic. And, we must believe that in this world, there'll be some parts of it that goes back to normal pre-pandemic, but there'll be other parts that have been changed permanently. And the businesses that adapt to those changes, to those permanent changes, the businesses that adapt to those the best are the ones who are going to win.
Okay, that's true that you have highlighted the issue about how the positive side of pandemic, the world that emerges after pandemic, can be capitalized on. And at this point, I think Srinath Murchilota, he's a secretary of the Calicut Management Association. He has got a question related to this. Srinath, are you online, sir?
Yeah. Hello.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead with your question.
Hi, good evening. So my question is I believe metaverse is going to be eventually eliminate unwanted traveling, and it also trying to eradicate poverty to an extent. And I also believe reduce the carbon footprint also. So what is the vision of Google in this particular regard? I'm actually a person who is working in the recently into this metaverse through a GeoGlass project. So I like your view on this.
Yeah, look, I don't claim to be an expert on anything related to metaverse, so it'd be hard for me to give you any point of view from a Google perspective. I certainly am not somebody who's qualified to speak to that. I will tell you this though. I think you may mention some of these things around maybe, carbon footprint reduces, all of these things reduce. And, again, the reality is something like the pandemic, for all its negatives, and it continues to be incredibly hard, also at another level has actually brought about, a lot of other positives, right? And so for instance, I'm sure when there was a lockdown, and again, IG Vijayan can actually give us the data, to this, I'm sure crime rates, probably took a dip, right? Because people were just not there. So, maybe the metaverse will bring down the carbon footprint. We don't know. It's hard for us today to actually forecast some of these things. It's just way too early to pass judgment on what it looks like. This carbon footprint also, I'd be very careful, because I don't know if it requires more computing power, well, does that necessarily mean carbon footprint has reduced, or has it, would it go up? We don't know. So it's a little too early for me, sir, to pronounce any judgment or to forecast the future on what the metaverse is. It is exciting that, there are companies and people who have a view on something like this, and that's what makes tech and sort of this world so exciting, that there's new innovation. People are constantly pushing at the boundaries of innovation, and some things will work, some things won't work, but that's what innovation is always about. Because if everything that you try will always work, well, then that you're really not innovating. You're just doing maths and adding things up. And so I'm genuinely excited by any and all of these developments, but I'm not an expert to be able to give you any answers of the metaverse, at least not now. Maybe we can come back in 6 months, and by that time I'll probably have a better point of view.
Thank you.
Thank you, Srinath sir. Thank you, sir. Sajith, you have brought in another interesting aspect to this thing. Like, there is a positive, there is a chance, there is a possibility for everyone in this new emerging world. For example, Google's holding company Alphabet made a $183 billion in the 2021 merely through ad revenues, because things are happening online. It has shifted to online, and this amount is probably more than the GDP of many countries, including Ukraine and Qatar. So, from a corporate responsibility point of view, what are the responsibilities of companies that have moved to the virtual space and are making good revenue from the virtual space towards the world at large? They are making humongous resources now.
Yeah. No, I think, look, I think it's the duty of every organization to be thoughtful in the way that we serve our stakeholders. And look, for us, our users and the people we serve are very paramount, and how we serve them, make sure that we are meeting their needs and sort of demands flawlessly every single time is one that we certainly aspire to. So that bit is very important for us. How are we thoughtfully engaging with governments and with societies is a very, very critical thing for us to think about as well. As you correctly pointed out, with the size and scale that we or other companies might be at, that comes with a profound level of responsibility, and responsibilities that we must discharge, very thoughtfully. And I do think that for us to engage meaningfully with governments, with societies, and with our users, such that we are helping them, and we are also here to serve them in ways that may not be so evident today, but that will become more and more important, is very, very critical. And some of this you can also see, like during COVID, for instance, especially as it took off in the first wave and the second wave even, the ability to be able to find your nearest hospital became very important, and which hospital had beds became very important, so on and so forth. So all of these things require, by the way, partnership with the government as well. And nobody can do any of these things alone. You require good partnerships. You require to be able to work with the ecosystem. And I think that's something that we take very, very seriously, and we always engage with the ecosystem and want to be able to serve our users in the most thoughtful manner possible. And that's really kind of, I think, the architecture or the kind of model that we follow, not just in India, but everywhere in the world.
Yeah, basically we are talking about collaborative partnership based leadership.
Yes.
So everyone becomes a leader in their own capacity.
That's true. That's true. That's the way to think of this, right? Like I think no company Certainly Google doesn't believe in this. I don't think we want to go at it alone, right? Like, or by ourselves. And we believe that we can do much better when we partner with the ecosystem.
Because there's a program called the Student Police Cadets, which is brainchild of Vijayan sir. This is about creating change leaders, young change leaders.
Yeah.
And the key to that program is that everyone becomes a leader. So
Yes.
creating leaders who can take up change-making initiatives on their own and spread it across the community.
Yeah, no, I know how true that is. And, by the way, let's not forget, everybody who's a leader also at one point in time was definitely a follower, and even today in some role is a follower, right? And so I always encourage the leaders I work with is not just to think of themselves as leaders, which of course they are, and they must discharge those responsibilities very, very thoughtfully, but also remember that they're also followers, and that how they follow also reflects upon how they are as a leader.
You keep coming back to that point that the leader is also a follower at the same time.
It's true. Yeah, very much so. I believe in that quite well.
There was an interesting question posted by Dr. Shreyas Palliani. He is an acclaimed author, actor, urban policy scholar, and a martial artist. He's from Singapore. He has worked with the governments of Middle East and Singapore as a transport expert. He's currently consulting for KPMG Singapore for transportation and logistics and strategy. But unfortunately, he got caught up in one of his official assignments and he's not able to log in. So his question was that, I'll read out the question that he has sent to us. The question was, one of the things people often highlight when they talk about good leaders is good representation of people on all aspects, interests, and backgrounds. Especially for a global connected singular citizenry, what impacts do you think a change in manual of leadership will have on equal representation?
Yeah, by the way, this is a very, very critical point to me, and I'm glad he raised it. See, any company or any society for that matter will always get better outcomes when you have more diversity of thought, more diversity of background, more diversity of gender and all kinds. And I think this is an area where certainly, India can do much better. And, be that in politics, be that in the boardroom, diversity, I think, is something we need to be much more conscious of and really encourage women and any and all other kinds to sort of really find ways in which we're supporting them, helping them rise. It's interesting. We actually have a lot of, for example, as I come to the topic of sort of gender diversity, there are a lot of young women, etc., who join the workforce and, who do really, really well. And analysis shows that we lose a majority of them once they get around to an age where they get married and then actually start families. And it's remarkable how very few of them actually return because, of course, raising a child is a profound responsibility. So I think companies, us, all of us, we have to think through ways and find means by which we would help, people find a way to come back, and how can we ensure that women come back to work, look forward to coming back to work, don't feel guilty about having to leave the child. How can we create those environments? And I think COVID has maybe again, one of its beautiful side effects. Everything about it is negative, but it's, like I say, in life you have to search for the positives. I think it has shown that there are ways in which you can combine, working from home and being productive and all of those things. And so, how do we support that so that we don't lose such incredible talent to the workforce, and that indeed, people can have the best of both worlds, i.e., have family and have all of that, and yet have incredibly meaningful, powerful, amazing careers and do well. And if we can enable that, then this world will get much better outcomes rather than if we were, mostly dependent on sort of either one gender or one point of view.
So in a way, are you trying to say that the COVID situation has created a new level playing field for all people who have been till date denied a platform or an opening? They are getting a chance to express themselves.
Exactly they are, because now it's we actually have a giant social experiment that's ongoing as we speak, that shows that you can be productive even if you're at home, and even if you haven't met people physically for like a very long time, or if you haven't even traveled to any other place, you can still be productive, right? And so it's a giant social experiment that nature and science has kind of forced us to undertake, and it's clearly showing that it is possible. It's, by no means is it a failure, and there are some incredible outcomes there.
Just one intervention in between. That
Yes,
sir.
sir.
I was about to invite you, sir. because-
actually, that it's good that we can be more productive. In what manner it is, we have to be really, we have to make a debate on it. How it will be the warmth in relationship, how that how intense will be the relationship, because the human being, it's a social animal basically. Can we have that warmth online or remotely? That's my being a police officer, I'm a little worried about it, because it all can lead to much more bigger job for us, a troublesome job for us. That's especially among the children and youngsters. How do you think about it?
No, I think you're spot on, by the way. Just to be very clear, I am not saying, but these are my personal opinions only, not that of either Google's and I certainly don't expect anybody else to agree with it. But I don't think that the world will move to a totally virtual world. And I don't think that, relationships can flourish only in a virtual world. So I am a firm believer in that. It's my personal opinion. And which is why I think the changing manual of leadership means hybrid leadership, right? But what I am saying though, IG, is that there was a time that you, and I grew up in that world, and so did you, which is that everything was only about real, as in I would meet you physically, we build a physical relationship because we have met, and then we can meet repeatedly. And now I genuinely believe that instead of you and me having to meet maybe 5 times, of course, that'd be a real pleasure, but maybe we can do with meeting with 2 or 3 times, and then there might be other follow-ups that can happen virtually, and so these things are going to, I think, combine, and they're going to work, and we are going to have to find ways to make it work, because technology and our circumstances, unfortunate as they are, have shown that they can coexist, right? And so I think a hybrid model is here to stay, and is indeed going to be the new norm. I don't think we will move back to a world where it's only kind of about meeting people in real life.
Now, why I did mention about it, that is, one of my assignment is that I'm heading the coastal stretch of the policing system for the coastal stretch of around 590 kilometers of Kerala. Over last 1 year, I didn't meet my officers in person. I was always having online meeting. Last week, I thought that I would have a personal meeting with them. So actually, it was 3 hours. I generally don't like a meeting more than 1 hour or so. There was 3 hours meeting. Everyone would like to share something. Everyone's eagerly waiting to share something, and it was so. And I felt that everyone enjoyed meeting each other. So there is a pending demand.
There's a pent-up demand, Mr. Vijayan. That I completely agree with you. But if you try to do this on a weekly basis,
it's okay.
I can tell you,
it's not possible. But as you rightly said, that it will definitely, because sometimes we'll call for meetings. Every organization call for some sort of meeting unnecessarily. That it could have been done online, because that
exactly.
This will definitely give a way for this hybrid meeting, especially in government, because we often call for meeting thoughtlessly, and that's that's okay.
No, it's a great point. It's a great point.
So we have to resort to the hybridity of the situation. We have to find a balance between the online and offline meetings. And how do you think we can, like, we'll wind up this discussion with your note on what future that you can see on leadership?
Just one thing. Let us just 1 minute. That's before going to that. I made a request to him that a lot of youngsters online are listening to you. You're traveling, that will be really means from so the God's own Calicut to this place and all. So can you give a little? Because you are from Delhi University, then went to take 2 MBAs, and then that's heading the Asia Pacific of such a big organization. How was your journey? It should be somewhat inspirational for the youngsters who are watching this one.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they have far amazing, much higher bar to look up to than someone like me. But I would say there are 2 or 3 things as I went through my journey. Number one, I was very lucky. I had very, very incredibly supportive parents. They even mortgaged their house to send me off to study and do my MBA in Manila. And I think I wouldn't, without their constant sacrifices, I think it'd be hard for me to have grown. The second thing I would say is, I almost always just would say yes to any opportunity that would come my way. I never really thought about, the money or all of those things. To me, it was just, find a way to say yes. How can you keep building? How can you keep contributing? And some opportunities were very exciting. Some opportunities were not so exciting, but that's okay. The idea is that you want to be seen as someone who can contribute, and that people therefore reach out to you knowing that, look, if I came to you, you would always put your hand up and you would do your best. And that, I think, is something that's very important. I work with a lot of youngsters who are not just millennials but also Gen Zs, and I think your choices are much more than what certainly I had when I was growing up. And so I find some of them, not all, but some are very, very particular about, if I don't think I'll do this, I want to do only this, all of that. And I'm not saying that's the right or wrong approach. All I'm saying is that your attitude or your openness to things is going to be very, very critical. And then the last thing is, never get too comfortable. I think if you can predict the arc of your career 3-5 years out from where you are today, then you're probably way too comfortable. And you should always find ways in which you are challenging yourself. I was very lucky at Google. I mean, I've been at Google for 14 years, but every 2 to 3 years, I've always had the great fortune of learning something new, doing something new, and that has kept me so challenged. And so I would, I'm not telling you that you need to change companies every 2-3 years, but find different things, find ways to learn new things. And if you did that, you'll be in a great place. So hopefully that helps, IG.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Anand, please carry on.
Thank you, sir. Basically, you are saying that you have to be disruptive you have to keep disrupting the.
Yes, you should disrupt yourself. Mm-hmm. You should disrupt yourself. The best person to disrupt you is you. And so if you did that, you'd be in a good place.
So in that sense, the disruption caused by the pandemic can be a blessing, and it should be a blessing. You have to find a new way to counter with that.
Correct. Yeah, no. One has to look at this world glass half full, because if it's easy to look at everything half empty, what's the point?
Thanks a lot, Mr. Sajith. You have spent almost more than an hour with us, sharing your personal experiences and your valuable insights into the concept of leadership, especially the new leadership, the hybrid leadership. I thank you on behalf of Mission Better Tomorrow. And Vijayan sir, you have laid the roadmap for the discussion with multiple possibilities of leadership. I thank you on behalf of MBT. And thank you all the audience for sticking with us for more than an hour, especially on a Diwali weekend. Thank you. let's get back for an amazing session of another session next Friday, or global session. We have speakers lined up for us. Till then, stay safe. Let's all rise for the national anthem, please.
Thank you.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता। पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा। विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा। तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे। गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता।